Right, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. So, we're going to be taking a look at the British broadcaster, the BBC, and they're sort of doubling down, I guess, on how they handle their adaptations. Now, this is important because we're just talking about the adaptations. We're not talking about their other products here, which we will take a look at Doctor Who in a moment, though, because it's in line with this. But this is very specifically to do with their history revisionism. Okay, now I love adaptations of novels. It's fantastic. The beauty of continuously adapting novels means that you are getting it for a new generation, a new audience, and the fact that we're able to do these and produce these with relative ease these days is great. It passes the stories down and makes them engaging and digestible for an audience that otherwise wouldn't know about the stories because they wouldn't pick up a book, right? But that's an important part of this, is that you're catering to an audience that genuinely, and I know this may sound bizarre, but they genuinely get their history from stuff like this. They do. And I know, before you all think, no, you're talking nonsense, you've got to remember, ladies and gents, some people don't know milk comes from a cow. Okay? So it's not that much of a stretch to think that these people, okay, one and the same, get their history from this. Okay? Now, because they don't pick up a book, this is a great way to adapt material and keep it fresh in pop culture. And still, you know, the morals of the story still get handed down and such forth. But if you're adapting a product while still setting it in the time period that it was written in, you really shouldn't bring it forth with modern sensibilities and adjust the entire scope of the story at hand. Because you do lose some of the authenticity there and the elements behind it. And also as well, before everyone screams bigot and racist and things like this, to fully appreciate how far we've come with our racial equality and our acceptance in everyday life with respect to the LGBTQ community or anything, any of these things, we still have to remember and know where we came from. So there's nothing wrong with showing historical timepieces like A Christmas Carol, like War of the Worlds, predominantly white male led, because one, it's historically accurate, but secondly, it also allows people to go, oh, okay. Again, these people that get their history from here, it allows them to go, oh, okay, right. Well, that makes sense now to why everyone keeps banging on about diversity and representation and equality. Oh, great, because it used to be like this. Okay, it makes sense. But also, you are butchering the story that someone else created, which is a bit disrespectful anyway. Now, that out of the way, let's take a look at what Piers Wenger said, because he hits back at criticism of its woke versions of classics, insisting that old stories must be adapted for modern audiences. No, they must not. And if you're going to adapt the story, and you want to do this, set it in modern day. That's the way to do it. Just set it in modern day. But if you're going to set it in the time period, okay, War of the Worlds is essential. The time period that it's set in is essential. It's part and parcel of the story, and it's very, very important. Really, really important, in fact. But if you're going to do that, then you can't do everything else. You can't modernize it. It's history revisionism. It is quite literally the same as talking about World War II and disregarding things which happened, right? Because modern sensibilities, we can't show anti-Semitism, for instance, right? It's something along those lines. It's the same kind of thing. We go through these strides, but, you know, one is acceptable, but the other isn't. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason as to why one should be shown, but the other shouldn't. It's the same kind of cultural strides that we've been through. So no, they shouldn't be modernized. If you're gonna adapt it, modernize the whole thing. Set it in a better time period so it fits the new narrative that you're looking to push. So anyway, we get into it, right? So the BBC's head of drama has defended criticism that it is preoccupied with appearing woke after repurposing classic texts to boost roles for women and ethnic minorities. Piers Wenger said older stories must be adapted for a contemporary audience. No, it shouldn't. The broadcaster recently adapted novels to appeal to diversity-obsessed viewers, swapping male leads for female stars and casting ethnic minority actors in traditionally white roles. Remember, it's not traditionally white roles, it's historically accurate. So if you're going to do it, just modernize the whole thing. But you can't do that because the stories, as they are liked and loved, are in those time periods. So they wouldn't dare, which is a shame because not only does it show the distinct lack of balls that the BBC has, which is ironic, funnily enough, but also it goes to show the fact that they're very much just trying to firmly toe the line and trying to get some money, because of course it's not just the taxpayer in Britain that pays for this. They do have distribution partners across the world that pays for these items. Now anyway, it continues, right? Examples from last year include War of the Worlds and A Christmas Carol. Now A Christmas Carol is an important one because it's historically accurate, right? Their adaptation. But they actually, well, it's not historically accurate. They set it in a history timepiece. But they could have actually modernised it, but they chose not to, which is dumb as hell, because you end up with this. Now, what is wrong about this picture? I know, sweet, whoa, what are you saying, Mr. H? No. These two, loving couple, that's fine. Okay, it's not historically accurate. But what's wrong about the bloody offspring? Outside of genetic outliers, this simply wouldn't happen. You just look dumb, BBC. You just look stupid. This, again, trying desperately to fit into a narrative, you end up with real bizarre discrepancies which lose all engagement from the viewer. I've got suspension of disbelief. But what? Come on now, behave. It just makes you go, well, did he have an affair with someone else? Because she's older. Did she have an affair? Are they what? No. But they said they're actually brother and sister. Oh, of course they're brother and sister, yeah. But whatever. Again, outside of genetic outliers, it's not too often that actually happens. But maybe. Anyway, so it continues. Mr. Wenger, the BBC's controller of drama commission, said they were adaptations of books that were written a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. But we are repurposing them for a contemporary audience. So modernise the whole thing. I've got nothing wrong with them modernising the whole thing. You won't. Probably won't get people to watch it though. But that's the thing. They want to set it in the time period because they want people to still associate it as much as they can, but they want to differentiate as much as they can as well. They need to speak to a contemporary audience and represent a contemporary world. But they're not set in a contemporary world. That's the problem. Set it in a contemporary world rather than doing historical revisionism. Utter nonsense. Now, and they said, so they need to represent a contemporary world as well as being stories set in our past. That's completely contradictory. That's the point of adaptations. You do that with everything. No, you don't. I really object when I hear the word woke used in a pejorative way, but what does woke really mean? Mate, you can object all you want, but you know what woke means. Okay? You do. Let's be honest. If it means equality being important and fair representation being important, then absolutely, that is important to me. Whether that is what woke means, I don't really know. You do. Everyone does. When people say they don't know, they absolutely know. But I do think that equality, fair representation and portrayal are all things that matter hugely to the BBC, and it would be a dereliction of our duty if we didn't own those particular initiatives. Mr. Wenger also said it would be a massive loss and a shame if the BBC moved to become a Netflix-style subscription service. Well, that's pretty much the way it's going, mate. Because BBC drama chief defends Doctor Who, says it's a long way from being rested amidst a ratings drop. So they acknowledge that the ratings have gone down, but we're not going to do anything about it because they don't really care. Okay. The BBC's drama chief, Piers Wenger, same dude, remember, the guy that doesn't know what woke means, has defended Doctor Who following a drop in ratings and a mixed reception from fans for seasons 12 of the sci-fi drama. So you've got to remember, previous article, he knows what woke means, okay, and he defends these adaptations consistently. And he says, yeah, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. It has to be a representation of a modern day sensibilities, blah, 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 blah. But then we get to this. And it's like, for God's sake, stop doubling down. Just sort it out, okay? If you're going to do an adaptation, don't set it in the past. And also, maybe, start listening to people with respect to Doctor Who. So, at a BBC drama event in London on Monday, Wenger was asked if he would consider resting Doctor Who given some of the malaise around the show, which is produced by BBC Studios and airs in the US on BBC America. Wenger offered a strong rebuttal in which he argued that the Time Lord franchise, starring Jodie Whittaker and overseen by showrunner Chris Chibnall, is in fine fettle. Now, his remarks were, I worked on Doctor Who myself and produced it for many years, and I can honestly say I don't think it's been in better health editorially. The production values have never been better. Production values do not equal quality. And they don't equal ratings either, mate. You can have the lowest budget, okay? People make short films on smartphones, right? Tiny production values. And they'll get better ratings than Doctor Who. Production values are not, you know, it's not a linear track for higher ratings versus higher production values. It's not universal. It's also not just funded by the BBC, it's funded by lots of international parties. Basically, we can't stop it. We have to because we've signed contracts. It's an incredibly important show for young audiences. It's still watched by families in a world where there are fewer shows that have the power to do that. It will always be an important show for us, and we're a very long way from wanting to rest it. Now, season 12 concludes on BBC One and BBC America next weekend, so it's done. Because this, I think it's done. When was this one written? 24th. Oh no, so coming up this weekend, sorry. Now, so Sunday's penultimate episode hit a low of 3.7 million overnight viewers. Its 7-day ratings, including catch-up, have also been far from remarkable. Meanwhile, there's been some disquiet amongst fans about the introduction of a second Doctor, played by Joe Martin, and the emergence of the Not My Doctor hashtag on Twitter. Chibnall responded to some of the brickbats in January, saying that he is only focused on making the best show possible. In terms of external opinions, it's not a democracy. We make the show we want to make. And I agree. It is not a democracy, and you should be making the show you want to make. Absolutely. But now it just shows you're not the right man for the job. So you should just be fired. You should be sacked off the show. Okay? And this is the thing. Paramount, right? Paramount, very clearly, the right people to handle the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Why? It's not a democracy. They tried something. They clearly realised it wasn't the case, so much so that they went back to the drawing board. Now, they didn't have to. Okay, they didn't have to. Because you've got to remember, they also had Terminator Dark Fate. And they chose to stick, they literally chose to stick by that. But, Sonic the Hedgehog, they listened. Or, they realised. One of the two. But this guy's not, he's not the man for the job. Now, and BBC's not, they're going. They're on their way out. Now, again, just as a brief recap. Adaptations are fantastic. Keep adapting material. But if you're going to adapt it, and you're going to force modern sensibilities on it, okay, bring it to the modern era so it fits. And if you can't bring it to the modern era, because like War of the Worlds, narratively speaking, the time period is very, very important, don't do it. Just adapt it as is. Okay, it's important. These idiots, these absolute idiots, that get their history from these types of shows, okay, because that does happen, they need to appreciate how far we've come. Not everything has to be adapted for modern audiences. Okay, there is only so far that suspension of disbelief will go. It's only so far that the twist of the narrative can happen without it snapping. Okay, it'll only bend so much and then it just snaps. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Please do let me know down below in the comment section. I cannot wait, eagerly anticipating these comments coming through on this video. But yeah, let me know down below. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on the world of pop culture movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Mr. H. Take care.